take that as a no. You got this? Yeah. You good with us?
Okay.
Thanks, man. Are you ready for us?
Yeah.
Awesome. Are we okay down here?
What?
Are we okay down here?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Awesome. How y'all doing today? Cool. We don't actually have a presentation. We just wanted to see how many people we get in a room. Yeah, we failed. No, we got people. There's a number of people in the room, right? So thank you for joining us Saturday morning at 10.
How many people are hungover right now?
Not many. Nobody raised their hand. Nobody is hungover right now? There you go. Or they're still drunk. I know they were. That's what I said. They're all still drunk, right? Yeah. So, well, good morning. Red Bulls are selling well. We're going to talk about ethical control today. I'm Kevin Johnson. This is James Jardine. We're with Secure Ideas. We'll do an introduction of each other in a second. The topic we're going to talk about today has a set of slides. But if you've ever seen James or I present or listen to our podcast or whatever else, the entire purpose of the slides is to ensure that we only go for the 50 minutes we've been allotted, not the 12 hours that we could rant about this topic, right? So, well, you know, I'm thinking by the end of 12 hours, people would have left. So we've been watching a lot of stuff in the industry. We've been part of the industry for a while. The industry, right? You know, and I think just calling it that alone is part of the issue. And we're seeing a lot of concerns for us. And I see a lot of concerns for our clients and our employees and our people and our families and everything else. And as an industry, as a community, as a group, we seem to be struggling with growing up. And I don't mean that as in we're all immature jerks, but the industry itself is maturing. We're becoming more important. People are recognizing the fact that what we do is necessary, but at the same time, we're having a little bit of issues with stopping the anarchy, rebellion, screw you hippie, I can do whatever I want, right? And so what we want to talk about is how do we address what we see as a serious concern, insecurity and everything, right? Insecurity, attacks, compromises, breaches, whatever fancy words you want to talk about, whilst, you know, and encouraging the awesome, dude, this is fun, while also recognizing the fact that what we do has significant impact on everybody we work with and everybody we don't work with, right? And so that's what we're going to talk about today, and we're going to give some examples. We're going to deal with that. So, do you have the little clicker thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have the microphone, so you will listen to every word I have to say. He won't get the movie reference, but maybe a few of you will. So I'm James Jardine, Principal Security Consultant at Secure Ideas. Pretty much do everything that Kevin doesn't want to do. So that's what I get stuck with. I'm an instructor, author, taught the MobiSec course that we just had recently here at DerbyCon. We also have Black Hat, some other events. Participate in a few open source projects. I podcast a lot. Nobody probably listens to any of them, but that's okay. I'm not hurt. The most important one, what?
You don't even listen to them.
This is true. I don't listen to them. My podcasting goes from open GarageBand, start talking for 20 minutes, export file, upload. So we don't listen to podcasts before we send them out. And I blog quite a bit, so you can check those out.
I'm Kevin Johnson. I'm a nerd. Had to throw my daughters in the slide. So we got Darth Vader and Hermione. I'm the founder and CEO of Secure Ideas. That means I'm a head nerd, right? I'm also an IANS faculty member, doing the forums and all that kind of stuff we work with IANS. Open source projects all over the place. Podcaster, I'm not as prolific as a podcaster as James is. I deal with the professional legal perspective, which we do absolutely regularly. We're just not telling you the schedule. Okay, it's not true. I'm also the 501st member. This is the thing that my wife says is the nerdiest thing I've ever done. My answer is she doesn't know everything that I've ever done. So the 501st, for the people who don't know, is a Star Wars costuming group, We build screen replica. I always say realistic, and then I go, wait, whoa, okay, stormtroopers aren't realistic. But there's screen replica Star Wars costumes, and then go and raise money for charities. We go out to like children's hospitals and do stuff like that. And yeah, we get to wear Star Wars costumes. How can that be bad? Currently, I just started building my Wookiee. So I will be latch hooking, as will my daughters, an entire 7-foot costume, right? And so,
To extreme LARPing.
yeah, James says it's extreme LARPing. He's wrong. So we have a good time. The company, we do pen testing, all that kind of stuff, blah, blah, marketing. And then that's me. How many people saw this one? Shell-shocked, right? Like, I just want to say right now, my opinion, the fact that we're giving logos to vulnerabilities is a problem. And I understand, right, it brings attention, it gets it in the news, which means we fix it. Also means we scare the shit out of people, right? I mean, we have become the FUD that we all hate, right? And I'm not saying that shell shock wasn't a bad flaw. I don't want anybody to walk out here and go, wow, Kevin said shell shock wasn't that big a deal. He's an idiot. I may be an idiot, but that's not what I'm saying. But we go out there and we do things, and this is Robert Graham, a Radisec, right? And he's actually somebody which you may be surprised by after reading some of the tweets I've done. I actually respect greatly a lot of what he's done. And I see what he's trying to get across, and he's trying to do this scan to say, hey, what is vulnerable? And so he started a scan of the internet. And if you can read the Wireshark capture, right, what he's doing is he's sending a packet up to a server to cause that server to execute an arbitrary command, the command being a ping of an IP address that Robert controls, so that he can see that the command executed. And his argument is, I'm doing this for the greater good. The world needs to know where this vulnerability is, so let me go do this. We won't talk about the fact that the IP addresses of what he's targeting are unblurred on this screenshot, and they're unblurred because he didn't blur them, which meant that he was announcing to the world that that site was vulnerable, that IP address was vulnerable to this attack. And as far as I can tell from talking to him via Twitter and reading his blog posts, he's not actually notifying the people he's scanning. He's just hyping it on Twitter. Greater good, right? Let's not talk about the commands he's running and all of that. But this is a perfect example of us as a security community feeling that the ends justify the means. It's okay for me to do this because I've authorized myself. And he's even come out and said just yesterday, right, was the blog post, that security researchers, James's favorite word phrase. Oh, yeah. So, but his opinion is, as he said in his blog, security researchers must be free from the chilling constraints of the law. That quote, and yes, I'm taking it out of context, but the context didn't change the meaning, right? Basically, it says, I'm a researcher, so I should be allowed to do whatever I want. It doesn't matter what the law says. Which means that that person who didn't like my research, I get to shoot them in the head because the law said I'm not allowed to, but I'm free from the chilling constraints of the law. The security field is huge.
Yes, it is. So we have lots of issues within the security field, right? And I love the image on here of they've got the gate but little low bushes, right? Who's not going to get past that? Well, there's a few people that might not. They're like, oh, well, that is true. You wouldn't jump those bushes, right? But we've got a huge range. We've got forensics. We've got testing of sites, right? Monitoring. There's so much stuff that's going on within the security field, and here we complain that we're running low on cybersecurity professionals, right? We don't have enough. There's such a shortage. But do we really have a shortage? Or are we just misusing the resources that we have? Right? We've got QA groups, we've got developers, we've got business units that could do half the stuff that we're saying we need to do from a security standpoint, right? We're trying to split off and say, oh, the CISO has to report to the CEO. How many debates have you seen online about who the CISO reports to? Right? We're crying all day long about, oh, I have to report to the CIO, I have to report to the CTO. Right? We want to have our own branch, CISO, down over here. Right? We don't want to have to do anything over here. We're this team, you're that team. Right? And we need to start merging that so we start dealing with, hey, I'm a security guy and I'm working with QA, I'm working with development, I'm working with the business team to get stuff done and use them as our resources.
The reason why security has to be separate is to avoid the conflict of interest with the CIO branch.
I hate to say it, Tony. So your answer is the reason you have to be separate is to avoid the conflict of interest? I've heard that too many times, and to be honest, I'm sick of hearing it. Right? Because if what we're going to say is that security has to be separate so we don't have a conflict of interest, wouldn't that mean that QA has to be separate because we don't want a conflict of interest with development, and operations has to be divided because we don't have a conflict of interest between the Linux and the Windows guys, and the lawyers have to be separate, and the secretaries have to be separate? The reality is security is part of the business. There is an inherent conflict of interest, period. And we need to just accept that. And we need to bring it back together, because the problem we run into is, even within the security field, we siloize everything we do. How many people in this room are pen testers? How many of you as pen testers have ever done IR on a compromise? Some of the hands that went up just went back up. Right? How many of you as pen testers have been a sock monkey monitoring the network and looking at stuff? 2 hands went up, 3 hands went up, right? The reality is that all of this stuff affects everything. We've been talking about purple teaming. We've been talking about embedding this stuff and understanding this stuff, even in our own field. We don't take into account what the other side does. And I'll go back to the Robert Graham example, right? Has he honestly thought about the incident response team that got spun up because some evil person, because they're not following him on Twitter, just scanned and ran commands on our server? Did he think about the fact that some of the IP addresses he scanned may be on networks that are required by law to immediately notify if there's some type of breach? And the word breach is vague enough that I would consider running the ping command on my server by you doing it a breach. I now have to file in all the SR paperwork. I have to deal with that breach notification. I have to deal with all that stuff to figure out what happened, right? And as we look at the security field and we think about how do we bring people into it, right? At Secure Ideas, we have a rule. We don't hire pen testers. We don't hire people who got into security because it was cool and could make them lots of money, so they went and took a college class or a SANS class or a whatever, and I'm now a security person. We hire operational people, people who have been developers, people who have been admins, people who have done what the other side has to do, and then we bring them up, right? We train them, we teach them. And as James said earlier, as we look at all of the security teams, internal and external, right? Every single person I've talked to is hiring. We're hiring, right? We're looking for consultants. I walk around and I hear everybody saying it. I'm hiring, I'm hiring, I'm hiring. I talk to internal teams, right? Is your internal team full? No, we need more people. We need more people. We can't find qualified people. Have you looked at that group of QA people? Because let's be blunt, as pen testers, all we are mean QA people. Right? I didn't follow the script. I told you you sucked. Now I have to give you an answer of how to fix it. I can't just stop at, you suck.
I actually was just talking to my wife about, research or going my rant of research, which I won't do here. But after I get done with it, she's like, well, doesn't that make you a QA person? I say, yes, it does. I'm QA, right? And that's what we ignore throughout the process, right? You watch on Twitter. We're seeing people saying, QA can't do this. QA can't find cross-site scripting. They can't find SQL injection. If your Bounty's paying for a single quote for SQL injection, you should be punched in the face, right? QA can find that. Developers can find that. We can train QA to find this stuff, and I've got all kinds of rants on one of my blogs that's not even listed on our slides about QA and testing. Yeah, about QA and testing, right? Because we're not including the people that can do this. And we're trying to say, no, you can't do that. Only I can do that. And it's not that specialty. And we see comparisons. Well, you have general practice doctors, then you have surgeons, and you have neurologists, and you have this and that, and that's fine. But in reality, we have staff of people that can start testing some of this stuff to catch it before it goes out. And then we know who they are.
Especially when you start looking at costs. And I'm not going to go into the whole thing about, well, if you catch a bug in development, it costs 27 cents and $4 billion if you do it after production. But the reality is, I am more expensive than the person you're paying a salary to. And that's a great marketing, right? You know, hey, I'm really expensive, right? Okay, we're not that expensive, but I am more expensive to be brought in as a third party who's going to look at stuff. And so what you want to do is you want to use the money you're spending on the me, whether that's Black Hills or Trusted Sec or Secure Ideas, and use that money to find the hard things. Do you know how much it pisses me off when I'm doing a pen test and I put a single quote in the password field and I get a database error message on the login? You just wasted my life. Every automated scanner in the world should be able to find that, except for AppScan, which sucks, but that's a different story. But it should be able to find that. If I find it, it means you suck. And it's not that I come in, right? That is that you suck. Because you should be able to find that. I should be finding the logic flaws, the timing issues, the problem that takes thought. When my daughter, Brenna, was 5, she was finding SQL injection in login forms. Hire her. But we see this constantly as we look at this, right? And we start talking about what's going on. And look, the reality is, the world sucks. We've got lots of issues. And as a father, I look at my daughters, Brenna and Sarah, and I love them to death. And they changed my viewpoint in the world. When they handed me Brenna, the world became dark. It really did. I loved her. There was joy and love and amazingness, right? And then I looked at everybody else and went, you're evil, right? What are you thinking when you look at my daughter, right? I bought a gun. But I look at them and I think, wow, I really need to protect them. And I start thinking about Home Depot and Walmart and Target. And I did not just announce a new breach. It's my new favorite joke. Do you know why Walmart wasn't attacked? They're not a target. But you knew it was coming. It's one of those things. It's a horrible joke, right? But we got to wonder, are we secure? Are we compliant? Do we know what's going on, right? Do we respond correctly to things? I have people all the time, autocomplete is on. What are we going to do? The browser doesn't even pay attention to that setting anymore. Come on, get over it, right? But are we paying attention to the right things? Are we watching the right things? I've had pen tests where I've done 2 million requests against a web server and nobody noticed. We talk to people all the time. Hey, did you see our attacks? No. Were you looking? All right, what about that one guy, right? We go on site, it's Monday morning. They give us a laptop to plug in and start using to do some of the client assessment, right? And we plug in the laptop, we turn it on, we go into our kickoff meeting. And I see, we're in this like glass wall filled room, right? And you see the sock monkeys over in the corner, and all of a sudden the guy and he jumps up and he runs, which is always fun, right? To see a guy, but never mind. But he runs across the room and he goes, are you guys attacking our semantic server? Yeah, that was what I did, right? I sat down and said, screw it, let's go after that semantic server. What are you talking about? And after working with him for a minute, it turned out that when his laptop started up, and I'm sure you all know this, right? Symantec connected to the enterprise manager and said, hey, I'm here. Do you have any signatures for me? Stuff like that. Normal startup things. But because the evil pen testers were in the room, now all of a sudden it became a compromise because he was looking. He hadn't been looking before. And it was like, really? So you're even watching the right things? Are you looking at the right stuff, right? And we've got, Robert said it yesterday, right? The CFAA is vague. well, technology is newer now. You're right, technology is newer now. But the Bill of Rights hasn't changed, right? Technology has changed, but we have to deal with that. We need to look at all this kind of stuff. And the last one, which I think is most important, right, is do we even have the right people involved? Do we have the right people doing this, right? Because the reality is the right people make the difference. And I don't just mean Susan, right? I don't just mean Bill. I mean, are we getting the right groups involved? Are we talking to the right people? Are we getting them engaged? And you know, I'll jump back to my favorite topic, obviously, Robert Graham, right? He's announcing this stuff that he's doing for the betterment of the world. But the reality is he's talking to an echo chamber, right? The people who follow Robert on Twitter are us, right? My wife doesn't follow Robert on Twitter. Her father doesn't follow him on Twitter. The person who manages that server doesn't follow him on Twitter. And so we don't even know if we've got the right people involved, right?
Yeah, and on, you know, continuing that point, right? Talk about who we're following on Twitter, what stories make a difference, right? We're big on hype. Home Depot, the largest breach ever. A week later, okay, maybe it was just self-checkout, so it was only 5 people. Oh, wait, no, it is the largest breach ever, right? But in reality, everybody outside the InfoSec community doesn't care, right? My mom doesn't care that Home Depot got breached. She didn't. My parents don't call me anymore. Oh man, Target got breached. What should I do? I don't care. My dad watches his credit card statements, whatever. Yeah, he gets a new card. He reports fraud. He doesn't really care, right? But InfoSec, we spill it all out. Media, oh, it's the biggest thing in the world. But what is that helping, right? How is that helping our industry get better besides what we're doing and what we like to, you know, think of as we're shaming industry, right? Our way to get across to the business is, I might put it to you politely first, if you don't do what I want you to do, and we can call it extorting as well, right? I'm going to post it out there and I'm going to let everybody know that you're not listening to me, right? And in reality, most people don't care, right? Home Depot, oh, well, but we're seeing it work, right? Shaming is working in our industry. That's why we have bug bounties. Bug bounties are a result of shaming.
Well, if you look at the whole, if you look at companies that have been breached, and they pledge that they're going to be doing massive changes, and going to take a year later, look at their InfoSec and see how much change has been done. What you'll find is these changes that they talk a lot more about what they're doing, but they don't actually do.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. We're bullied. That's what we're doing. We're bullies. Right? We were the bullied. At least I was, right? I always joke the person who stole my lunch money all the way through school still takes my lunch money every day, makes a damn good Subway sandwich. But as a group, all that we're doing is bullying the people outside of our group or the people inside of our group. Look at Twitter. How many times do we beat up on people of our own? We eat our own young, right? And our old, right? What the hell? You wrote that up? That's awful. But did you talk to them? Did you ask them? I mean, like, we're threatening to, it's awful. And when we start looking at the vulnerabilities, when we start doing things, right? Going and scanning a system and running arbitrary code, going and doing stuff like this researcher, right? Which, by the way, what was his hypothesis before he started the research? He said, oh, I understood research when I went to school. I know I'm not a college graduate, right? But in high school, we knew how research worked. You had a hypothesis, you tested it, you had a control group. Who was his control group, right? All the websites he didn't hack. Nice, right? So he goes out to the Apple Developer Network, and I'm not, I am a fanboy. I should wear a black turtleneck. But he goes out to the Developer Network, and he finds a vulnerability. Okay, cool, right? Awesome. Now let's get on stage. Tell us about your vulnerability, because that's how we deal with it, right? But then he pulled 100,000 records. And he caused the Developer Network to get pulled offline for a week.
At least.
Yeah, at least a week.
I don't know the exact time, but it was at least a week that the developer network down.
Right? And the question becomes, was that okay? And there are people who will say, no, it's fine, right? Greater good. Ends justify the means. And by doing that, he forced those jerks at Apple to pay attention. You know what? You may not like to believe this, but Apple was paying attention. They may not have done the right choices, and I don't know, but they were paying attention, right? And he didn't need to pull 100,000 records, right? Because the answer is, well, I was going deeper. I was verifying the flaw. Let's not get into, did you have permission to verify that flaw? Did you have a contract? Do you look good in orange and metal bracelets? But the reality is, if all he was doing was verifying the flaw, right? Count star in a select statement. Yep, I could have gotten 8 million records. You didn't need to actually pull the data. You didn't actually have to egress anything except for a single integer. That's it. But no, that's not what we do. Right? I'm going to say something rude for a second, right? We're dick wavers. Mine's bigger than yours. 100,000 records. Right? That's what we do. And this didn't help anybody. As a matter of fact, in my opinion, it did the exact opposite. Because the developers, who are the ones we should be encouraging, the ones who are going out and reading the documentation, the ones who are trying to fix it, we took a resource away from them meanly. We stole their lunch money. And for a week, this was down, or about, right?
About a week. Yeah. My favorite part of this actually is the tweet that he sent out was, "Don't worry, I'm not a hacker. I was just doing security research."
I'm glad he told us.
Yeah, that makes it all better, right? Apple, go ahead and stop your IR, stop all the stuff that you're doing.
You don't have to do breach notification.
I was just talking.
Lost personal data through the compromise.
Right, yet we find that most hackers call themselves security researchers, right? We have split personalities. Depends on what I'm doing right now. If I want to be cool, I'm a hacker guy. Oh wait, no, I'm doing something that's illegal, or maybe against your ethics, right? Maybe it's not illegal, but I'm doing something different. I don't want to get in trouble for it. Well, I'm a security researcher, right? And we can go all day on security researchers. And fortunately, we're not going to. But this is what we see. And we see this out on Twitter. We see this out on social media. And we have a completely split industry of, no, this guy's perfectly right. It's research. And then you've got, no, this guy's wrong. And we see the same thing with Robert Graham, right? A whole bunch of people say, no, you broke the law. A whole bunch of people say, no, he didn't. Right? So we're confused in ourselves. Right? And of course, the only person that can tell us whether we broke the law or not is the judge that makes that decision. Right? We don't get that option. We can say we don't like it, we don't agree with it, but it's the judge that makes that decision. So on with this guy, because he was perfect for examples. Right? Google Play crashed not much later, twice. Happened to be the same guy doing research. Just research. Right? And he was just attempting to exploit the flaw. So we're not just doing vulnerability discovery, we actually want to exploit. Hey, how far can we go with this? Knock Google Play down twice. Right? So this brings us back into, who do we have doing this stuff? How do we get people to know what they're doing? Because I know when we do tests, right, we have stuff in there. Hey, we won't do denial of service, although it is possible that it may happen. Right? But we've got contracts, we've got training, we know what we're doing. And not to say that researchers out there don't have, there's plenty of people out there that have very good skills and know what they're doing. But when you're just randomly hitting sites, one, you're playing a pretty fine line, right? Because at any point, somebody could come by and say, you know what? You hacked us, right? And it goes to court, you have to fight it. That's your fight, not theirs, right? Corporations have way more money to bring you through and drag you through the legal system than you do. It doesn't matter how much supporters you have.
How many free whoever's we come up with?
Right? Maybe you get lucky. They tried you in the wrong venue and you got a chance to get out to a non-extraditionary country. But not everybody's that lucky. Right? So we need to think about that as we're going through things.
Boils down to ethics, and this is one of the things that this is a pet peeve of mine, right? How many people here have taken a test for ethics? A few, right?
Ethically ethical room.
We have an ethical room.
Or ethically knowledge room.
Oh, you're right. We didn't ask if you passed. You're right. Right? But ethics is not law. Right? And ethics aren't the same. You have a different ethical concern, difficult ethical standard than I do. We may be similar. I think that the majority of us in the room would believe that we shouldn't just randomly behead people. Right? Ethically, I think it's messy. Right? Well, it is. But our ethics then change, right? Do you believe it's okay to rob banks? Is it okay to rob a bank if you're starving to death and that's the only way for you to get money to buy food? Right?
Is it okay to rob a bank? And in essence, research.
Yeah.
That's it, right? What's the ethics of putting a single quote into a text box?
Right.
Is that illegal? Is that not? Is it ethical?
It's my name.
It's your name, well, maybe, right? But we start looking at this and we start evaluating it, and then one of the things we have is that we evaluate other people's actions on our own ethics, right? And that's the way it is. I'm not telling you to change that, right? But if your ethics say this is okay, that doesn't mean it is. It just means your ethics are different. And then there also becomes the question of, well, what viewpoint do you have, right? Because I'll tell you right now, I look at the guy on the upper left, Snowden, the best thing that ever happened to security companies' marketing, ever. If I see another marketing guy, sales guy go, do you want to be Snowdened? It's now a verb. That is awesome. I want to be a verb. There you go. I want to be a verb. Were you Johnson? Wait, that doesn't sound right. So, when you look at Snowden and what he did, right? I'll bet you that everybody in this room has their own opinion of what a hero, martyr, asshole, jackass he was. Whatever words you want to pick out of that group, right? And you have your beliefs and I have my beliefs. And we can talk about the good that has come out of this and the bad that has come out of this. But the ethics of what he did is different for everybody. And I'll tell you that I look at Snowden and I think, jackass. Because my ethics say, whistleblower, great, you're a whistleblower. But whistleblower means you have the balls to stand up and say, take me away. Right? That's my ethics. I'm not judging, I'm just saying that that's my ethics. And I look at the jester and what he does, right? Stay frosty. And I look at what he does and I think, you know what? That's awesome. But at the same point, what he's doing is not that much different than what Anonymous is doing. Right? And do I have the same opinion of Anonymous? Well, it depends on which part of Anonymous you talk about, right? Because they're all different. And we start looking at these things, and we say, wow, what do we handle? How do we deal with this? What about you? Right? How many people here have ever put a single quote in a URL where it wasn't supposed to be? Right? Yeah. Was that okay? Did that make you different than Weave? Right? Yeah, I've never doxed anybody. Right? But we start looking at this, and we start thinking about, we have to evaluate, right? Where it goes. What about certification? How many people here are certified? Yes! Right? I have letters after my name. I have a lot of certifications. I don't know why. But I do. Oh, wait, I do know why. I took some tests, right? And my favorite one was, for the example here, was the Certified Ethical Hacker. Yeah, I took that test. I took that test back in like 2002, and I understand that it's different now. God, I hope so. But I took that test back in 2002, and there wasn't a single ethics question on the test. There were a lot of command line argument questions, right? But no questions of, if you see a gold bar sitting on the table that you've just watched a lady leave there, can you keep it? Right? That'd be an ethical question. I don't know how they judge it, but right. But I did have to sign an ethics agreement that said that I wouldn't do bad stuff. My CISSP says that I won't interact with evil hackers. So that mailing list I'm on, the Daily Dave, right? When he posted that stuff, was that an evil hacker? Did I violate my ethics agreement? Right? GIAC does lots of that kind of stuff. Do we follow those? Are those a good way to come up with an ethical standard we should all hold to? Because out of the 4 that I have up there, their ethical statements are all different. Right? And I'm not bashing them. I'm not sitting up here saying, get a certification, don't get a certification. I'm not going there. I'm just talking about, as an industry, we regularly agree to certain ethics. But how many people actually read the ethical agreement of the certification test they took before they took it? Or did you just say, yeah, I agree, let me take this damn test because I'm done, right? I want to answer and fill in the bubbles, right? But we have to hold them to that, right? That security researcher in Turkey, did they pull his CISSP, right? Did he have one? Did he violate it when he did this? Who monitors that? Who polices that, right? I don't.
Well, I actually know of certain companies and organizations that will outright say that they don't get certified people, they don't have to stay certified because they don't want to be bound by ethics.
I believe it. I believe it, right? So how do we deal with that, right? You know?
Well, and I think that we're going to start seeing a little bit more of that, right? The bug bounties that we're going to talk about in a minute. These people that are going to say, you know what, there's ethics clauses there. I just won't get the certification, right? And if I'm doing stuff independently, I'm an independent researcher, I don't need a certification to test, right? The only time I need a certification is when I'm going for a job, I'm trying to get a contract, trying to get legit work, where they say, oh, well, we require CISSP for some unknown random reason, right? Somebody's done a good job marketing and saying, oh, if they've got their CISSP, they're straight out of heaven.
The number one reason for requiring a CISSP in the financial world is because of that judicial notice, which means if they put you on the stand, they can't question your credibility. They can question if you did your job right, but they can't question your right to do your job.
Another instance of why the judicial system has problems. Oh, got CISSP, I'm credible. Yeah.
Everything you did, they can question how you did it, but they can't question your qualification to do it. So it's like you don't hold your balance.
Yeah. How about bug bounties? How many people here like bug bounties? They're awesome. How many people here have been paid a bug bounty? It's funny, it's the same hand. But you know what? It's a joke, right? But bug bounties are an interesting idea. Yeah. Yeah, I recorded or something. Yeah. Bug bounties are, I actually kind of think they're cool, right? I'm a company, I'm going to open up a bug bounty to get many eyes looking at my system, finding holes. And you know what? If they find something and I like it, maybe they'll get a prize. I'll give them a t-shirt. This is cool. Not only do they find security holes for me, but then they advertise my shit by wearing my t-shirt. Right? That's brilliant. That's even better than Nike, who convinced all of you to buy t-shirts with their logo on it. Right? So you gotta get, hey, but then if you do something they really don't like, all they gotta say is, well, no, I'm sorry, that was out of scope. Right? Because there's limitations, what the bug bounty does and says, right? And we already started, matter of fact, James and I both got into a Twitter agreement. That's a Twitter argument. But,
You probably can't even say that again.
Twitter agreement? Ha! Right? So, where it was like, hey, you know what? Bug bounties are the norm. So if you don't have one, you don't meet industry standards.
I love the facial expression when you said that.
The norm. Right? Yeah. Norm from Cheers. But we started talking about this. Like, wait a minute. To me, the norm means the majority, right? It's regular. We started paying attention, and Jeremiah Grossman is actually who came back and said, well, there's about 300 sites that do bug bounties. And I don't know where he got that number from, but we're going to quote it as gospel. But we do have an asterisk, but you notice we don't have a footnote that explains the asterisk. We just have an asterisk. Right? That way we can make it whatever we mean later. Yeah. So, it's about 300 sites, right? I don't know about you, but I think there's more than 600 sites we're worried about. Yeah, right? But bug bounties are an interesting idea, but let me ask you a question. Who's doing them? And I mean the testing, right? How did you vet them? How did you differentiate between the person doing the bug bounty and a real attacker, right? I don't know. Depends on the bug bounty, right? Are you ready for one? In my opinion, if you're a bug bounty company and you're offering a bug bounty and you're paying out bounties for that single quote in the password field, you failed. You need to have robust security. You should be doing testing. If you pay out a bounty, I should be able to read the description of it and go, holy crap, that was awesome. Now, you should probably pay more than a $10 t-shirt or something at that point. But, right? We shouldn't be finding cross-site scripting flaws. We shouldn't be finding test servers on healthcare.gov. But we should be stronger than there. We should be doing some type of scoping and saying, this is what's part of the bug bounty. This is what you're allowed to test. And oh, by the way, I'm going to vet you. I'm going to know who you are before you're allowed to do the bug bounty program. Not because I don't trust you, but because I don't trust you or anybody else. And there has to be a way for me to distinguish you from that other guy who isn't doing the bug bounty, but is trying to steal data. Because we go back to the idea, how do I differentiate an attacker from a friendly person who just happens to be mean, right? How do I decide whether we call the IR team? It's like we were working with a company and we found signs of compromise while we were doing a pen test. We started talking to them and their answer was, well, we just assumed it was you. We had a pen test going on, so we assumed all the negative traffic was you. Like, that's great. You know, so we just announced when we're doing pen tests and all the hackers go, you know what, we're not going to screw with those secure ideas guys. We're going to let them do their test and not have any of our noise running at the same time. So that it's a hacker-free zone while we're doing our testing. It's like gun-free zones. But that's a different story, right? It just, it doesn't work that way. So how do you differentiate? Build that into the program, right?
And going back to the norm thing and why we bring that up, right, is it the norm? Is it the standard practice? Which, looking at HackerOne, looking at BugCrowd, right, I mean, those two together have less than 100 programs involved in their systems. Public programs, right? They do have private programs, right? There's other companies that have this, but we go ahead and say something's the norm. That means when you get breached and you're lucky enough that the FTC or somebody comes in and says, hey, what were you guys doing? Well, right now, if you're not doing a bug bounty program, but it's the norm, you guys are going to be considered more negligent, right? Hey, you're not doing everything you're supposed to be doing. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I have no problem saying that if my bank started offering a bug bounty, I'd switch banks. Right? Because one, bug bounties are new. Most people have no idea how to implement them. Right? They're just letting anybody go after them. We talked about certifications. And we've got, how do I know that the guy on the other end who's paying, or getting paid via PayPal, he's accessing my network through Tor, did he get a CSSLP or anything like that?
Yes.
To answer your question, still we don't distinguish between, we view the failure of our incident response team and our monitoring team, the inability to find guys who are doing the testing as a failure of their company.
So you're saying that you don't differentiate between attackers and bug bounty people, or
We do not.
so you call your incident response team for every attack?
We
Awesome.
see the attack and they fail to find it. That's part of our after action reporting. Why was this guy able to do this? You weren't able to detect.
Perfect. You were then an example of somebody who has robust security doing it right. And that's what we say. If you've got strong security already, doing the bug bounty makes sense. Right?
We've also been doing it for many.
Exactly. Right? You've been doing it for a little bit longer than anybody else. Right? Which is good. So that ties right into this stuff. And then we start getting into this call for licensing. And this is the one I find funny, right? How many people want to have licensed pen testers, licensed forensics people, licensed security monitoring people? Right? I'll tell you right now, if we don't get our act together, that's what we're going to get. We already saw it a few years ago where states started passing laws that if you wanted to do forensics, you had to be a private investigator, because Dick Tracy is what I think about when I think about doing drive imaging. Right? But we're pissing off a lot of people, and a lot of security breaches are happening on our watch, And the idiots in the government, and I don't care what government you're talking about at that point, I feel very firmly that if you ran for office, you were probably an idiot, right? I don't want to be a part of any club that wants me to be a part of it, and they want to be, but they're going to pass the laws. And we've already seen how well government passing laws to signify technology or limit technology works, right? You have people who really don't understand. I remember a few years ago there was one politician, I think he was a senator, that was very proud of the fact that he didn't know how to check his own email. He proudly talked about the fact that he had to have somebody else get his email printed and give it to him, and he would dictate responses, and that guy is going to decide whether or not a bug bounty is legal. That guy is going to decide whether you're qualified to do your job. Unless we put our act together, build something together that we do. And I understand, I've already talked to people about the idea of herding cats that are the security community and getting the Weave, the Snowden, the Ed Scotus, the Dave Kennedy, and the Kevin Mitnick to all agree as to what is the right thing to do. I can't even get my daughters to agree on where we're going to go to dinner. And we need to figure out an idea, and in my opinion, right? We need to regulate ourselves. And the model I look at is the bar, right? And I'm not saying it's perfect. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure it's anywhere even close to good. But this idea of saying we're going to come up with the guidelines, we're going to come up to the standards. You know, PTES was a great one that was being worked on. That's just on the pen testing side. This is all of security. But if we stood up and said, this is what we think is right, and maybe what Robert Graham is doing becomes part of what we all agree is right. And you know what? If that happens, I'll cry. But no. If that happens, then fine. That's the standard we set. And as an industry, as a group, we pull together and say, this is what is allowed. And we work together to fix the laws, the opinions, the impressions, and the beliefs of all of the non-security nerds, so that when Robert scans arbitrary servers and runs an arbitrary command on that server and says, it's okay, it's authorized, because I asked that guy and he said yes, well, then it becomes okay. And at that point, we're able to point to the politicians and the governments and everybody else and say, look, you don't need to do this. We handled it ourselves, right? And by showing that, by building up something that says this is what we do, I think we have a better chance. And we're looking for feedback. We're looking for people to stand up and say, you know what, I don't agree with you, but damn it, I'm going to help. If for only reason you want that is so that you don't have my opinion being the one that gets presented, right? I'm okay with that. But we need to come up to a standard, and we need to not fall into the petty bullshit that we do all the time. You know, there's a reason why there's an InfoSec drama llama on Twitter, right? There are people I follow on Twitter just because of the arguments they get into. Breaks up the day. But we need to start saying, let's start. And I recognize that this is a big elephant we need to eat. It's a huge, monumental task, right? But if we start, we'll get there. But if we don't start, if we continue the way we've been doing it right now, where it's just like, shit, man, this is difficult, and damn it, I want to make things better, right? Then we're never going to fix it. And next month, or next year, all of a sudden there's going to be a law that's going to have teeth beyond what we've got now. Next year there's going to be people going to jail. And we're going to rant and rave, and the EFF is going to raise money and waste it, and all of us are going to do Kickstarters and FundMes and whatever, right? We're going to whine and pout. And we're going to realize that all the bullying that we've been doing put us in the same place as the person who bullied us, or me, working at Subway. And there's nothing wrong with Subway. They make a damn good sandwich. But we're not going to get to do the cool things we do now. We're not going to get to have the fun. We're not going to be able to inspire the next generation of people to look up at what we do and say, shit, I want to be that person. I don't want to look at my daughters and see hate in their eyes. I don't want to look at my daughters and have them look at us and think of us in disgust. And I'd like you guys to do the same thing. That's it. Right?
I have tears in my eyes right now.